Yeah, it's great to be here. I tell you the truth, though. Some folks say, "Oh, aren't you scared to go back to Arizona after what happened to you?" And I said, "No, I've proven my innocence." And just from some of the things you heard today about proving things isn't always that easy. Is proof something that's indismissible, that's pure and clean, and can never be changed or challenged? Because we say we prove somebody's guilty in a court of law, yet the number of people like me that were innocent was supposed to be proven guilty. And I did change my opinion of the death penalty system, having supported the death penalty in the past. And this is going to be a story time. It's a true story. It's not meant to be sad. There's definitely some sadness in it. But it has a happy ending because I am here. I am one of the survivors of death row of a state that wanted to execute you. Take your life because you're a monster and you don't deserve to live. And really, to start my story, I'll go to my background. I grew up in a small agricultural town, south central Pennsylvania, one of them farming communities where the day you're born, you already have a reputation based on your family's last name, because everybody knew everybody. I went to the same high school my grandparents went to, same church my great-grandparents went to. I was in the Boy Scouts. I was in the church choir, played Little League baseball, Pee-wee football. In '74, when I graduated, I enlisted in the U.S. Air Force. I enlisted for 6 years active duty, got stationed in places like Texas and Mississippi, then Georgia, then Maine, then right here in Phoenix, Arizona. My 6 years were up, I got out. I liked it out here, sunny and warm, a lot of work, a lot of hot women, all those things that a 23-year-old was looking for. I got a job with the post office, life was good, and bought my own house. I really didn't have much to worry about. As I say, things were going well with me. I never met the love of my life. I had no children, so all the money I was making at the post office was mine. I said, man, I had a Corvette, a four-wheel drive truck. I raced stock cars up a Canyon Raceway. I had a motorcycle, a dirt bike. Also still played a lot of sports, and that's where the program arose from, because a lot of our sports were sponsored by a bar or a pub, and that's where the trouble arose on December 29th in 1991. The owner of a local bar in Phoenix, Arizona came in, opened up his establishment that morning, and found the front door unlocked. He thought, hey, what's going on here? Why did my night manager secure my door? Right away, he made his way over to the cash register, searched through the cash register. Everything appeared to be there, but it wasn't secured. It wasn't taken and put in his office in a safe. So next he went into his office, and there was a safe. The door was closed, but again, as soon as he pulled on it and opened right up, it hadn't been locked, wasn't secured. Again, he went through the contents. Everything appeared to be okay. Nothing seemed to be missing. But he was concerned about why his night manager had not secured his money, his property, his assets. He could see looking around the bar that the place had been cleaned, trash had been taken out, the stools had been stacked, but not his money. And as he looked around, made his way through his bar, that's when he found his night manager, Kim Krone, lying in a puddle of blood. She'd been stabbed to death. All she had on was her socks. And of course, the police were called, and they initiated this investigation under the assumption it had to be somebody that knew her, somebody that had a relationship with her. There's no evidence of a break-in, no sign of a robbery. This had to be somebody who was there for her. They began questioning her coworkers, who she would see and who she would date and who does she like. One of them girls mentioned my name. This happened at 9 o'clock in the morning. About 1 o'clock that afternoon, I lived about a half a mile away. I heard my dog barking outside. He never barked much. He was a big old Dobie. When he did bark, I paid attention, and I got up and looked out the window, and there was a car had just pulled up in front of my neighbor's house, and two men in suits had gotten out. I went outside to let my dog in the house, and by that time, these two men were walking up my driveway. I stepped out. I said, excuse me, can I help you? He said, yes, are you Mr. Krone? I said, yeah, yes, I am. What can I do for you? He said, do you know Kim Krone? I thought a minute. I said, no, I don't think I know anybody named Kim Krone. He exchanged glances with the man next to him, looks back, he said, you don't know Kim Krone from CBS Lounge? I said, well, wait a minute, I shoot in their dart team there. I play volleyball for them. I said, a girl who works there named Kim. I said, I don't know her last name. He said, you don't know her last name? You're her boyfriend, aren't you? I said, no, I'm not her boyfriend. What's going on here? He said, well, you're dating her, aren't you? I said, no, I'm not dating her. What is this about? And that's when he opened up his jacket, pulled out his badge, identified himself as a homicide detective in the Phoenix Police Department, told me Kim's murder and said he was there to ask me a few questions. I'm a little shocked, a little stunned. Here's somebody I know vaguely. I've been going to the bar about 2 months as a murder victim, and they're at my house to ask me questions? First thing I said was, sure, come on inside. He said, no, we really need to do this downtown if you don't mind. I was put in a black and white police car, taken down to the police department there in Phoenix, put in a little interrogation room for the next 3 hours, grilled about how long have we been dating, where do we go on dates, how many times she's been to my house, where do we go for dinners. All the while I'm telling him, look, she's never been to my house, I'd see her at the bar, that was it. During this 3 hours, at one point, he had me take my sneakers off, passed them out to an officer. I got them back later on. Another point, he took mug shots and fingerprints of me. All the while going to this boyfriend-girlfriend scenario that he believed. Another point, he had a piece of styrofoam, kind of like off those coffee cups. It was two of them taped together. Had me bite into this thing. I didn't know what was going on. There was no information being passed to me about the murder. There was nothing in the news yet. I just cooperated. Finally, after 3 hours, I thought that was the end of it. I didn't kill her. I don't know why anybody would kill her. I was home in bed. I got a roommate that knows I never left the house that night. And I was taken home. The next day was a Monday. I delivered the mail at the post office that day. I got home to my house, and there's the detective waiting for me. Says, I don't think you've been completely truthful, Mr. Krone. He said, you want to help me eliminate you as a suspect, don't you? I said, well, of course. What do you need me to do? He said, well, I need you to come downtown with me again. I got some more questions to ask you. I'm like, all right. Back down to that same little room, only this time when I stepped in the door and got inside there, he slammed the door behind me, pulled out a piece of paper, and said, oh, yeah, by the way, I have a search warrant here. And you're going to give me a blood sample, a hair sample, and a cast of your teeth. Now I'm getting a little anxious now. I'm getting a little angry, like, what's going on here? I get the piece of paper from him, and it's all official. It says I got to do this, this, and this. And at the bottom, it's signed by a judge, and at the very bottom below that, it says they have 3 hours to take these samples. So, of course, I cooperated. I cooperated when he took blood out of both arms. I'm not sure he realized it was actually going to be the same. I cooperated when they took hair samples. And they don't take hair samples with scissors. It's pulled out by the roots from different parts of your body, put in little envelopes. I cooperated through that. They took me next door in a bigger room and they had a dentist chair set up. Put me down in this dentist chair, had these metal casts filled up with goop, jammed them in my mouth, took 2 casts of my upper teeth, 2 casts of my lower teeth, put this plastic apparatus in my mouth, had my lips all spread apart, taking pictures and snapping and telling me to move my bottom jaw around, to smile, to snarl, to grin. And all the while I was asking me the history of my dentition. Back when I was 17 years old, I was a passenger in a head-on collision. I woke up in hospital with a broken jaw, my mouth wired shut. 6 weeks went by, the wires came off, and the top and the bottom jaw didn't line up. They had to re-break it and wire it shut for another 6 weeks. After 12 weeks, I had some dental problems. I had some teeth that had died. I had to end up getting some root canals, ended up with some bridge work done. 15 years later, I was still careful with my teeth. I wasn't biting into fresh apples. I wasn't chewing corn on the cob. And here they were for over 2 hours poking around in my mouth. Finally, that was done. I was taken back next door into that little interrogation room. I went to sit down. He bangs on the desk. He said, look, it's time to come clean. It's time to tell the truth. I know you did it. Why don't you just confess so we can all go home? Well, that was it for me. I was angry by then. My honor, my integrity is something I was always proud of. I was 35 at this time, something my friends and family recognized in me. Certainly something the U.S. Air Force must have recognized, my honor, my integrity. I had to take an oath to serve this country. I had a top secret clearance for the job that I did. Clearly the U.S. Postal Service must have believed in me and my honor, my integrity, to give me a job as a letter carrier, handle people's mail, personal property, in and out of their homes. And here's a man that doesn't even know me, calling me a murderer and a rapist, tells me to confess. Well, I come up out of my seat. I told him what I thought of him, what I thought of the police department. So why are you wasting my time? Go find the person that did this. And by the way, my 3 hours are up. He looked at his watch. He looked back at me. He said, look, Mr. Krone, I'm not going to argue with you. There's other ways to handle this. Took me home. 15-minute drive, was really silent. Never said a word the whole way. Dropped me off at my house. Again, I thought that was the end of it. Well, the next day, December 31st, 1991, New Year's Eve, I found out exactly what he meant by other ways to handle this. As I got done delivering my mail that day at the post office, pulling in my driveway at my house to start the evening's festivities to celebrate New Year's, I stepped out of my car, and all of a sudden I heard the sound of screeching brakes. Doors slamming, people yelling, freeze, don't move, you're under arrest. I look around, there's a van load of police officers, black and white cars all backing them up, guns drawn, full riot gear, throw me on the ground and arrest me for murder, kidnapping, and sexual assault in Kim's death. I was taken to the Maricopa County Jail. As you all heard, the self-proclaimed toughest sheriff in America. Yeah, we did wear pink underwear. Yeah, we got green bologna sandwiches. And I knew right away I was around a whole lot of people I was not going to like. But you know what I was thinking about? Because I wasn't worried. I didn't do anything. What was crossing my mind was, did I lock my car? Who's feeding my dog? I got a big softball tournament this week, and they need me to pitch. Because you see, I was stupid, folks. I was completely naive. I honestly believed that they were out there and continuing the investigation, going to find out that everything I told them the truth. I'll be going home any minute. I'm just waiting for that announcement to come over there and say, Ray Krone, roll up. And the hours went by, and then days went by, and then weeks went by, and I'm still in there. And there's violence in our jails and our prisons, definitely. I had some friends come in and see me a little busted up, worried about me. I was able to get word out to my family not to worry, I didn't do anything. So I'll be straightened out. It's all a mistake. And they believe me. They knew me. They believe me. I only had to tell them once. But some of my friends got a little concerned, and some of them knew a lawyer. They'd send a lawyer in to talk to me. First thing I want to know is how much it's going to cost me. I remember a man saying, well, you're looking at about a $15,000 retainer, probably another $80,000 to $100,000 in expenses. And I'm like, wait a minute, let me get this straight. I make $30,000 a year at the post office. I bought a house 5 years ago for $50,000, and now I'm supposed to come up with $100,000 to pay you to defend me for something I didn't do, and I'm not going to get that money back? He said, yes, Mr. Krone, that's how it works. And my little country pragmatic mind kicked in right away. First off, I didn't have that kind of money, and second off, I didn't do anything, so why would I spend that kind of money? I said, look, I'll be fine, whoever represents me. I said, I can't afford that. Well, months went by. I finally got called out to a legal visit. A lady came in, set her briefcase down, picked up the phone, looked over at me. I picked up the phone, and she said, I'm here to represent you in murder, kidnapping, and sexual charges. She said, I'm with the public defender's office. And then she said, you can expect to be found guilty, but we'll fight it on appeal. And I went crazy. What do you mean I'll be found guilty? Why am I even in here? I had nothing to do with it. I just went off. She backed away, got her hand held up, got me quieted down, picked the phone back up. She said, listen, Mr. Krone, I'm going to tell you something. I don't take that tone of voice from the judge. I don't take it from the prosecutor, and I'm certainly not going to take it from you. Hung up the phone, picked up her briefcase, and was gone. Never seen her again. I actually got notice through the mail a couple weeks later from public defender's office saying that they were being removed from my case. They cited conflict of interest. They said that the next most likely suspect in this case was the victim's ex-husband. They had a 15-year-old daughter. He had a sleepover for her and her girlfriends, did something inappropriate with one of the little girls and was arrested for it. They were representing him in that case. They said because of that, I was going to have to be given a court-appointed attorney. I thought, phew, good, finally I'm going to get somebody to work with me. A private attorney is going to care about this. This will be over soon. Well, the day I sat in the courtroom and that private attorney was appointed for me, maybe he would have done a good job. Maybe I would have been out of there real soon. Except that right after they appointed him to represent me, the judge went on to grant him $5,000 to cover his expenses for representing me in a capital murder case. $5,000. You can't even get a divorce for $5,000. I got exactly what they paid him for, nothing. He didn't do anything in my case. Just 7 months after they found Kim's body, I'm sitting in the courtroom in Maricopa County facing a death sentence. He never called any witness. He wasn't interested. The trial lasted just 2.5 days. The 2 days was pretty much the prosecution. I found out why they had me bite into that piece of styrofoam that first day, why they had that bite mark expert there, they had that dentist there to take those teeth. Because the trial, the prosecution hired a bite mark expert who testified. Very, very pretentious, very impressive man, well-dressed. He had a curriculum vitae like 7 pages long. He was the dean of the UNLV Dental School. He was a state senator from Las Vegas, elder in a Mormon church. The list went on and on and on. Very well-spoken, very impressive, very powerful speaker. In fact, we later found out very well paid. He was paid over $50,000 by the Maricopa County District Attorney's Office for his work in my case. But he testified that the marks on the body matched my teeth, that my teeth were unique as a result of that car accident, that those marks happened at the time of her death, and that made me, Ray Krone, without a doubt, the murderer. I was called a snag-tooth killer in the papers. It took the jury just 3.5 hours to find me guilty. They convicted me of murder and kidnapping. They acquitted me of the sexual assault. Again, I don't know how exactly to explain that, the prosecution's theory. The motive, he said, I went to her at closing time to help her. She refused me sex. I forced myself on her, realized what I'd done, and had to kill her to silence her. That's why the prosecutor said I'd killed Kim and Kona. Nevertheless, I was convicted of murder and kidnapping. About 5 months later, I had to go before the judge for sentencing. At that time, before the Ring decision in Arizona, the jury only handled the guilt phase. The judge himself handled the sentencing phase. The jury was dismissed by then, and you went before a judge in what's called an aggravating mitigating hearing. It's a little mini trial. The first part, the aggravating part, is put on by the prosecution. This is where they argue why it's above and beyond the norm, so outrageous, so horrible, that it merits a death penalty. And they argued a couple common things: senselessness of the crime, the helplessness of the victim, but the main thing was the bite mark. They said this bite mark was excruciatingly painful, excessive pain and suffering the victim had from this bite mark on her breast. And that's if it was while she was still alive. Or he said it was just after she was dead, when she was unconscious, he said, and that's tampering with a dead body. My God, that's necrophilia. That's just heinous and depraved. Now, they have to find at least one aggravating factor in order to get a death sentence. And the judge ruled, yes, that's aggravating enough for him, for sure. And then the defendants turned in to put on what they call the mitigating. Mitigating, as you know, means to lessen, to ease, to soften. Common mitigating factors could be a drug or alcohol impairment, history of mental illness. I want you to think about something. How do you mitigate something you didn't do? How do you show remorse or regret for an act you never committed? That's what they wanted me to do. They wanted me to stand up there and say how sorry I was for committing this horrible crime. I told my attorney, I said, I got nothing to mitigate. I didn't kill her. He goes, well, we'll put your family on, your friends on, have them come up and testify. I said, no, I'm not subjecting them to that prosecutor's cross-examination. Because you see, during trial, I took the stand. I raised my right hand and testified. When I was done, that prosecutor came up and grilled me for the next 3 hours. When I stepped down off that witness stand, I was so confused, disoriented, I almost went over and laid down next to him. Felt like a beat dog. In fact, my roommate that I told you about was staying in my house time, took the stand and raised his right hand to testify in that court of law to tell the truth. And when he was done answering my attorney's question, that prosecutor came up to cross-examine him. He said, now, you've known Ray Krone a long time, haven't you? My friend Steve said, yes, that's right. It's been 11 years since we were in the Air Force together. And then the prosecutor said, and Ray Krone's always been a good friend to you. Been there in times of need, times of trouble, looked out for you. In fact, he's even giving you a place to stay in his house right now, isn't he? My friend kind of straight up said, yes, that's right. That's the kind of guy Ray is. And the prosecutor leaned over in his face and said, you'd lie for him, wouldn't you? Turned and walked away and sat down. Less than a minute's time, he called my friend a liar, told that jury to not believe him because he's just going to lie to protect his friend. So I was not going to subject my friends and my family to being cross-examined by him in a mitigating hearing. I said, I got nothing to mitigate. My attorney said, well, you're going to have to tell the judge that. So I did. I told her, I got nothing to mitigate. I said, you got the wrong person. I didn't kill her. And I was properly called an unremorseful monster, a hardened murderer, and sentenced to death. I was taken away to Florence, Arizona, and changed, put in a cell the size of most of y'all's bathroom at home. Cinder block walls on 3 sides, steel bars, a sliding metal door in the front. Had a trap, we called it. It was about this big, had about a 4-inch ledge on it, and that's where they fed you through. Everything came in and out of your cell through there. And you better be there when they came around to feed you. Because if it fell through and fell on the floor, they just looked at you and laughed and said, well, what are you going to do, eat it or not? I never, ever got a hot meal on Arizona's death row. No way. If it was warm, we were lucky. Because, see, they don't let the monsters that we're supposed to be, those people sentenced to death, don't let us work in no kitchen. Not with all those weapons around. Oh, no, no, no. Our food was prepared over in the minimum yard, put in carts, and wheeled over to death row and sat in the hallway till they felt like feeding us. I had a cement slab for a bed, had a mattress pad on it about 1.5 inches thick. I got 1 army blanket, 1 sheet, 1 towel. I wrapped that towel around my sneakers. That was my pillow. And that's what I had to look forward to until they took me out to execute me one day. I got out of that cell 3 times a week. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday was rec day. If you were there when the guard came around to ask you if you wanted to go out, which was a lot of times early in the morning, so you'd be sleeping and grouchy and wouldn't hear them. But they'd come and search you. You'd be completely strip searched. You'd be shackled at the waist with your hands handcuffed. You'd be shackled at the ankles. You'd be walked out into the desert in a cage, a 10 by 10 square cube cage. It was fenced all sides, and you were put in there for 2 hours outside. That was my release, my escape from that little prison cell, where I could feel the sun shine on me. Maybe I could see an airplane fly over, maybe hear a dog bark, maybe a car horn, a motorcycle engine, a lawnmower, anything to remind me that I was still a human being, not this monster in a cage waiting to be executed. During that time, I beat myself up at first, wondering why me, what I do to deserve this. My folks believed in me, as I said before. They still supported me. My mom had sent the Bible in. I started reuniting with my faith and reading the stories, found strength in the stories of like Job and Jonah. Out of the darkness shall come the light, some passages that stuck to me. And I realized if I'm going to fight this system, I better know this system. I started going to the law library. And for some of you that read law books, you know how much fun they are. But I was actually getting the hang of it. Then I started learning about this thing called shepherdizing, and I'm all confused again, because here's a case that's on point, it's very important, and I shepherdize, and here's another case that's on point, but it says no relief granted. And during that time, I had a second cousin. It was my mom's cousin. Found out that he had a relative on death row in Arizona. Wondered, my God, what kind of a family am I from that would have a monster like that? Came to talk to me, just out of curiosity. When he was done, my first time I met him was Arizona's death row, talking over the phone through the glass. And when he was done, he said, I believe in you, Ray. I'm going to do what I can. And he started looking into my case. And he found a bite mark expert out of New Mexico. A man who actually worked for the state police department there was shown the evidence in my case. And within a few minutes, he said, that's not a match. He said, no, that doesn't match at all. My cousin's pretty thorough. He doesn't take things right away. He wanted to go and check. He checked 2 more bite mark experts, showed them the same evidence, and Ray all had the same opinion. That's not a match. So they filed a special action appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. They filed for what was called a post-conviction relief to go back to my original trial judge with this new evidence and get a new trial. And it was objected to by the prosecution, saying that Krone's already under direct appeal to the Arizona Supreme Court. You can't grant this motion to have a new court trial. And the judge ruled in his favor. He was an ex-prosecutor himself. He was responsible for half a dozen people already on Arizona's death row. He said, denied, you can't have a post-conviction relief motion right now. And my attorney then took it to the Arizona Supreme Court special action, saying we should have a right to proceed with the post-conviction relief even while the direct appeal was proceeding. And the Supreme Court ruled in his favor, said, yes, that's true. Krone does have a right to it. However, if his direct appeal is denied and his post-conviction relief motion is denied, he effectively, in one fell swoop, just lost all his state rights. I would have effectively went through all my possible remedies in state and would have been facing execution about immediately. But nevertheless, we proceeded with that, and at that time, it was just 3 years after I'd been on Arizona's death row, the Arizona Supreme Court came back overturning my conviction. You see, during the time of my trial, I have to say, God bless my worthless attorney, because the day before my trial started, the prosecutor introduced a videotape made by this bite mark expert. Very impressive videotape, 45-minute long, of how he matched my teeth to this bite mark, and with the latest science and techniques and MRIs and everything else imaginable. 45-minute long videotape. Day before the trial starts, my attorney was actually awake, was actually paying attention at the time. He objected to that evidence. He said, Your Honor, I've never seen this before. I'm not prepared for this. The judge says, I've overruled. He said, I'm going to allow this evidence in. And then in a burst of brilliance, probably never again recreated in my attorney's career, he actually asked for a continuance. He said, Your Honor, since I've never seen this before, I'm not prepared for this. I'm going to need 30 days to prepare for this. And again, the judge was consistent. He never ruled in our favor, really, in anything. He said, denied. He said, we need to get this trial rolling. As I said, just 7 months after they found the body, they need to get the trial rolling. So when the Arizona Supreme Court reviewed this, they recognized for what it was. It was a violation of the rules of discovery. As a defendant, you have a right to know what evidence is going to be used against you, receive it in a timely manner, and be able to prepare for it. They said the prosecution was wrong by turning it over then. They said the judge was wrong for allowing it in at that time. And certainly my attorney was well within his rights to ask for a 30-day continuance under those situations. But just because there's mistake and error or omission does not mean you get a new trial. Does not mean you walk free. It's a second part to that. It's called harmless error evaluation. This is where they review this mistake, this error, this omission, determine whether or not it would have affected the verdict. Would anybody have cared? Did it even matter that this happened? And the Arizona Supreme Court's exact ruling on this said, without this video, there wasn't even a jury submissible case against Mr. Krone. They recognized that everything in my case was about a bite mark, that this clearly had to be critical evidence. And for that reason, my conviction was overturned, set aside, and I was now facing a new trial. By now, after 3 years in Arizona's death row, I knew the state of Arizona could and would execute you. There was about a half a dozen men that were executed during that time. Some of them I'd known face-to-face, had seen on the yard. My folks also knew it after coming in and visiting me and seeing the conditions, being shackled, like I said, in a jumpsuit, seeing the tears in my mom's eyes as they talked to me, say, Mom, don't worry, it'll be okay. They knew also that this was serious. It wasn't going to go away. They mortgaged their house. They cashed in the retirement funds. My cousin found an attorney out of California because we wanted nothing to do with the Good Old Boy Network in Phoenix, Arizona. We got that attorney. He said, look, we said, we don't have the money to pay you. He said, look, you just pay the expenses. I believe in Ray. He reviewed the case, the bio. He said, I believe in Ray. Chris Plorta was out of Southern California, out of San Diego. He said, I believe in Ray. You just pay the expenses. That trial started in February of 1996. In comparison, it lasted 7 weeks. Over 500 exhibits were introduced. We had 3 bite mark experts for the defense. 3 bite mark experts for ourselves testified at that trial. And the truth was coming out. I found out what a real trial, what a real defense attorney actually does for his client. Because Chris had looked at it, we had got all the police reports, and we started noticing, well, it skipped from number 21 to number 32. It went from 46 to 57. There was all kind of gaps through this. It's supposed to be sequential. Where are they? And he petitioned through the judge to order them to turn over. They finally did. Turned over a whole nother stack of books with a whole lot of interesting reports that we'd never seen before. Charged my family $700 copying fees, they said. We wanted the pictures. We had a stack of pictures. It might have been like a set of 2 double decks of cards. My attorney said, no, they take way more pictures than that. There's something not right here. Again, he had to go through the judge to order them to turn over. We got whole shoe boxes full of pictures. Charged my family $1,200 copying fees, they said. I thought as a defendant, you have a right to something like that. You see, they knew I was defending myself. My family was. They were just trying to run us out of money. But during that trial, also other evidence came out. We found out that they had actually taken a swab off that bite mark that I'm alleged to have made on their breast. In '92, it was new to them. They didn't know exactly what they were doing, but they fiddled around with it a little bit and couldn't get nothing helpful. And they sent it off to a crime lab in Colorado. Again, nothing was helpful. So they never let anybody know about it, except Chris found out some references to this. And first they denied doing it, then he showed where they said that they had taken, oh yes, we did, but we used them up. Then Chris pointed out, well, how come you sent them to Colorado? If you, oh yeah, that's right, we sent them to Colorado, but they used them up, they never returned. Then my attorney again found out that it was still up there in the lab in Colorado. By that time in 1996, there was a wonderful man named Dr. Blake out in California who'd figured out a way to replicate, to clone basically the smallest amounts of DNA, grow it enough to where it was big enough to use. Dr. Blake was sent that material from up there at the crime lab that the police department denied ever doing. And I was completely excluded. That saliva is what amylase 2. There's different body fluids have different makeups. This was described as saliva sample, a DNA sample from the bite mark that I'm supposed to make, was no way, no how, something in 1 in 400 quadrillion possible to be me. Imagine sitting in the courtroom. My folks had taken off work in Pennsylvania, sat here the whole time. Friends in Phoenix would come in and get off work on different days for certain testimonies. Imagine how that sounded us in that courtroom when they announced that that DNA from that bite mark was no way possibly mine. It felt good. I was believing in the system. But I still didn't get it. I still didn't understand how important it is for a prosecutor to win a death penalty case. This is how you climb the career ladder. It's the most important case you'll ever have as a prosecutor, and you better win that at all costs, no matter what. And I'll tell you what, how far my prosecutor was willing to go. Noel Levy stood before that jury at closing arguments. He's the last person, the prosecutor is the last person to address the jury before they go out to deliberate. He stood in front of that jury, told them to disregard that DNA, ignore that DNA, it has no bearing on this case. Don't let the defense confuse you or mislead you. That's all they've been doing in this trial. We know who committed this horrible murder. He's sitting right here in the courtroom. And you as a juror is responsible to see that justice is done for Kim and her family. That DNA is easy to explain. She's a waitress. She handles glasses and bottles all day long. That was just transferred there by accident from somebody else. The jury was out for 3.5 days. Came back and found me guilty again. Now, as bad as it felt the first time, I didn't think anything would happen the first time because I was stupid and naive and I was innocent. But by the second time, I studied a little bit of law and knew what reasonable doubt was and all those other things, and it was presented there. I just heard him say, what? Guilty? No, back up. Wait, rewind. That's not what you mean. How could you possibly be saying that? It was horrors going on. The scenes are all flashing. I'm looking over at the juror, and they're wiping the tears out of their eyes. The bailiff that was reading the verdict's voice is breaking up. He can't hardly finish. My attorney's hanging on my shoulder saying, oh, my God, Ray, I can't believe this. Why weren't they paying attention? Why didn't they see the truth? You proved you were innocent. He said, it's not over. I'm with you till the end. I look over at the prosecution. They're all jumping up and down, celebrating like it just won the big ball game. This is all going through my head all in an instance. But what snapped me out of that photo lineup was this most horrible yell, this scream, this wail from my mom and sister not 5 feet behind me. To turn around and see the look in my mom's eye. Say, Mom, it's okay, don't worry. Amy, don't cry, I'll be all right. They were just doing it to me, they were doing it to my family. 5 months later, I'm back before the judge again. And the same story. Prosecution used a bite mark and aggravating circumstances. Same story. I told my attorney I got nothing to mitigate. Again, this is an example of somebody, whatever profession it is, do your best. Don't cut corners. Don't take shortcuts. He said, you let me handle this. So I don't want to mitigate it. You let me handle this. And for the next 2 hours, he went over all the pieces of evidence that came out during that 7-week trial. Why footprints in the kitchen were their murder weapon? A big butcher knife was taken from. footprints on that tile floor right there. Same exact tile in the men's bathroom that they had actually taken pictures of. They used this magic dust and black light, had perfect pictures. Size 9.5 Converse. They went out and bought the exact shoe to fit this. When they arrested me, my shoes were a size 11. My bare foot was bigger than the whole shoe print. Why fingerprints and palm prints in that men's bathroom where Kim was stabbed to death and left to lay while the knife was washed, dried, and hid underneath the trash can liner? Why those fingerprints and palm prints in that bathroom did not match me? Why hair on Kim's body did not match me? DNA on Kim's body did not match me. When my attorney was done, the judge said that this case was going to haunt him for the rest of his life. He said it was hard for him to believe that somebody like me was there on trial for a murder that I didn't commit, even harder to believe that I was innocent and was about to be sentenced for something I didn't do. He said that he had lingering and residual doubt of my guilt, was his exact words, never before heard of as mitigating that I know of. He said, and that outweighed the aggravating. And so he sentenced me to 25 to life for the murder. Then went on to add on 21 more years for kidnapping, consecutive. I'm like, well, Pete, you don't think I did it? You're not sure I did it, so now you're going to sentence me to 40-some years in prison for something I didn't do? I'd had to serve 25 years minimum before I could have possibly been released on the murder, and then to start right away another 21 years for the kidnapping. 46 years I was facing. I was 35 years old when this happened, so you go ahead and add them two together. It was a death sentence. I might not be laid on a gurney, have a lethal cocktail shot into my veins in the name of the good people of the state of Arizona, but I wasn't going to survive 46 years in Arizona's prisons. They are very violent. They are very racist. I've been through a number of riots, been stabbed a few times. It's just the way it is in there. So I wasn't going to walk out of that prison alive at 81, and that was my first opportunity to get parole. Off I went to the maximum yard down in Florence, the walls. Again, my family and friends are all standing by me. And time's going by, and some days I'm thinking, man, I'm going to die in here for something I didn't do. And other times I get a letter from my 7th grade English teacher saying, I believed you, I knew you from when you were a child. I believed you as a student. I believe in you now. I sent a letter back thanking him, appreciating his letter. He sent it back to me with red correction marks on it. But people were still, days when I was feeling the most down, something would happen to keep me picked up, to keep me going. And I remember playing sports in my life. It's like, you can't always be the hero, but you don't want to be the one that loses a game for your team. And so everything was fine. I'm all right, because people were still fighting for me. Finally, in 2001, the Arizona State Legislature, recognizing the importance, the validity of DNA, passed a new law on post-conviction relief. Normally, you only have a short window to bring up new evidence. They realized that DNA was an exception. That was very important to be able to test DNA at any time to prove innocence. And they gave a couple restrictions. It had to be currently on-tested, it had to be properly maintained, and it had to have direct bearing on guilt or innocence. And we were able to find out that the clothing that had been cut off of Kim had been thrown in the men's bathroom, had been saved there by the police department, hadn't been checked. My attorney was able to get a look at it, noticed there were some kind of spots, stains on the inside of her pants, on her underwear, and requested testing done. And there was a hearing on this. The Attorney General's office showed up, the prosecutor, DA up in Phoenix showed up. They said, Your Honor, it's a wild goose chase, it's a fishing expedition, it's a waste of the court's time and money. Don't grant this motion, Your Honor. He's convicted twice of a jury of his peers. It's overwhelming evidence of his guilt. There is no need for this motion. Well, for whatever reason, that judge did order that testing done. He went on to order the Phoenix Police Department's recently accredited DNA laboratories to do that testing. Now, after all I've been through, the last people in the world I wanted touching anything was the Phoenix Police Department. That turned out to be a blessing, because law enforcement agencies were the only people that had access to the nationwide DNA data bank. DNA was stored from all over the country, accessible only through police departments. And so when they extracted DNA from that clothing, the same DNA on both the pants and underwear, compared it to me, it wasn't me, and compared it to Kim, it wasn't Kim. I say, you go, girl, because this overachiever, this lab assistant decided to take that DNA sample and put it in the national data bank, which was right there at her convenience. And when that thing got doing whatever it does, it came back with a match. A match to a man who was serving a 10-year sentence, currently serving a 10-year sentence for having sexually assaulted a child just a few months after the murder. A man who was actually on parole at the time of the murder for another sexual offense that happened years earlier, was released to his mom's house, whose address was just a few blocks from the bar in Phoenix, Arizona. What are the odds? He was questioned by investigators. They went down and talked to him. He was an American Indian. He had a history of drug and alcohol abuse and mental health issues. He denied killing her at first, and he went on to say, well, he had blackouts. He admitted to being at the bar and remembered getting in an argument over the bathroom, he said, and then he went on to say he woke up the next day with blood all covered in blood and wondered, my God, what had happened. And this was all tape recorded. So now the DNA results with this admission of guilt, they were taken to the prosecutor's office and they let Ray Krone go. He's innocent. Here's the proof. You know what that prosecutor said? He ain't going anywhere. We know he did it. We got the bite mark evidence. The local media lady up in Phoenix there got a hold of the story. I'm not going to say how it was ever leaked to her, but in just a few days, she was investigating. Next thing was front page banner headlines, how recent DNA results showed that me, Ray Krone, was serving a life sentence after being on death row, was clearly an innocent man, and that Kenneth Phillips was a known perpetrator, known sexual offender. I remember seeing that in the paper. I got the next day, I was down in Yuma. By that time, I was at a yard at Yuma, and I got called over to the counselor's office, and I was given the phone. He said, your attorney's on the line. It was Alan Simpson up in Phoenix. He said, Ray, how you doing today? I said, fine, just another day in paradise. And he laughed. He said, well, what are you hungry for? I said, well, what are you talking about? Eat whatever's in the chow. He goes, no, really, what do you want? Steak, seafood, Mexican food, beer, what would you like, Ray? I said, Alan, what the devil are you talking about? He said, I just got off the phone with the prosecutor's office. They just got back from the judge's chambers. They're cutting the paperwork. You're coming home today. I couldn't believe what I said. What did you just say? He said, roll up, Ray, it's all over. You're coming home. 3 hours later, I walked out of that prison down there looking over my shoulder, wondering, what are they up to this time? Because this is a trick they never tried yet. They fought me the whole way, denied the truth, and now I'm walking out of this prison. My attorney, Chris Plorty, was in California, came over that time, picked me up to the gate, and there was what turned out my release that day to start all over again my life at the age of 45, but also had the distinction when I walked out that day to being the 100th person in America to have been sentenced to death in our country, later to be proven innocent. 100 mistakes. So there was a lot of media attention. And they were outside asking me questions, all the cameras, all the lights, what was it like to be in there, how did you survive? And I mentioned one part about how I read the Bible front to back 3.5 times and slept with it under my pillow. And one of the reporters in the back raised his hand. He said, well, Mr. Krone, given your faith in God, how do you justify him leaving you in prison for 10 years? What a deep soul-searching question. How do you answer something like that? I was quiet. I'm not normally quiet. I was, they're all leaning forward with the microphones, cameras. And all of a sudden something shot into my head. And I said, well, you know, maybe it's not about those 10 years I spent in prison. Maybe it's about what I have to do the next 10 years. And that's what I'm doing right now, folks, and those are important questions to ask, and those are questions you might ask down the line. I thank you all for allowing me to tell a 10-year story in the minutes that I had, and I really appreciate your interest in this. And whatever you do in life, please do it the best you can. Don't cut those corners, and be able to lay your head on the pillow at night and know that you did your best you can for you and for mankind. Thank you.
To say a few words, and then we'll have a Q&A. I went right into Ray Krone, and I neglected to have you do the introduction.
Okay, so I'll give you my introduction. But what I was going to say in introducing, or at least one of the things I was going to say in introducing Ray is, I have heard his, his story, the experience he went through, the horror, and each time I hear it, including today, I think to myself, that could have been me. That could have been anybody. Here we have somebody who, as he described it, just a regular guy. No involvement with the criminal justice system before this. No problems, growing up in a good family situation, serving in the military, working for the post office, and just someone who wanted, wanted to have fun in life. And then all of a sudden found himself involved in this, as I said, horror story. And it's another example where bad or junk science landed someone on death row and in prison. But fortunately, for some good science, he was able to get out of prison. But Ray had, as he described, he had a supportive family and a particularly a cousin who just wouldn't give up on him. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are in his situation don't have that. And as a result, they just linger until maybe somebody, and like an innocence project, like the project we have in Arizona called the Arizona Justice Project, and the project we have here at the law school called the Wrongful Conviction Clinic, might get an interest in that person's case. I hope today, as we go through and talk about science in the courtroom, you do remember Ray's story, not just today, but beyond today. And there are hundreds of these stories in the country today. So I want to thank Ray for being with us. As I said, it's always inspiring to me, someone who does this kind of work, and makes me think, wow, how fortunate I am. That could have been me. I could have been standing before you today telling you that same story. Thank you.
Andy, why don't you just tell the group what you do? You're a professor emeritus, correct, at the law school?
Yeah, I'm retired. Well, it's not so much what I do that's probably important, or even though I'm involved in it, but here at the law school we have a wrongful conviction clinic that is affiliated with the Arizona Justice Project that was founded by Larry Hammond, who is sitting here today. And in that project, we represent people like Ray. And we do DNA work, but not just DNA work. We've got involved in arson cases and shaken baby cases that you'll hear about today, and so on. This is, we feel obviously important work, needed work, and hopefully, seek out through the Arizona state prison system the Rays that are sitting there with the same, kind of situation that he was involved in. So that's what we do here at the law school. We also get involved in representing people who have been in prison or have been convicted, and in their transformation back into society, and we do what reentry work as well here at the law school. So we kind of do the whole gamut. So again, welcome, and it's really great to have you here with us today.
Thank you very much. We'll do a little bit of Q&A. Would you like to have a seat with Ray Krone, just in case people want to ask you? Thank you. So,
Don't ask me, ask him. Do you have any
So-
questions
yes, does anyone have any questions?
for Ray? Yes.
What was the first
Oh,
meal you ate?
It actually was a Mexican burrito. It was actually up at the upside down inverted pyramid up there in Phoenix, right there on Central. It promptly came back up.
Oh, yeah.
Famous restaurant up there. Hey, 10 years in prison, you don't get red meat in there. It's all chicken, turkey, byproduct stuff, so it didn't really set too well. I actually tried to get my little sister to smuggle a little salt packets into the courtroom for me, because in the county jail there, that would have been like gold. That would have probably been worth more than drugs. The food is arbitrary. And she didn't want to do it. I said, you just drop it on the floor and believe me, I learned enough now being in prison, I'll get that. But I couldn't, my stomach couldn't handle the food. It took quite a while to be able to eat. In fact, another example from sleeping on those type of cots we had. I had to stay in a hotel for 3 weeks, actually, when I was out in like OR before I could go before the judge to be released. And I couldn't sleep on bed. I pulled the comforter off and laid it on the floor and slept on that comforter on the floor, because that was what kind of salt. I got on the bed, it was like I was on the ocean. I thought it was easy. I had to sleep on the carpet floor with the comforter. My stomach and those 10 years conditioning, but it didn't do well. I'm eating fine now.
Anyone else have
Other
any
questions?
I'm on, there's journalist students in here.
Yes. There's one right there.
So what do you do now?
I work, as you heard earlier, I've actually had to go after the state of Arizona. Arizona does not have a compensation law. You don't get nothing. I lost my home, my job, post office retirement, so all that stuff. But I found out during those 3 weeks when I had to wait go before a judge, I found out that Noel Lee was trying to make a deal with Kenneth Phillips to avoid the death penalty he'd say was there with him. They were actually willing to make a deal with this rapist and murderer to avoid the sentence that I got, to try to tie me into this crime that I did not do it. And I was so outraged, I talked to some other people. It was actually leaked to us through the defender's office. But at that point, I said, you know what? They call me a monster. Then, by God, I'm Godzilla. You're Tokyo. I'm coming after you. I talked to the media right away. Got out in the paper. They were trying to make a deal with Kenneth Phillips quickly. Romney and the prosecutor's office denied us, and they're not making any deals with Kenneth Phillips. He'll be prosecuted the full extent of the law. By the way, he took a plea bargain. He's not on death row after being a rapist and a child molester and a murderer. He is not on death row. I go to death row because I fought him. But back to your point, I did sue him. I was able to get some money found. They did settle out of court. It's very difficult. We found out that they had changed the size of the shoes after I was arrested. They actually had taken the evidence. The local medical examiner who did that dental stuff originally had taken the teeth. The local medical examiner was not a board-certified forensic odontologist. He actually technically couldn't have testified as an expert in my trial. They realized this could be a problem. He was being trained by a man out of Southern California, a man named Skip Sperber, who was a board-certified forensic odontologist. My attorney was from California. My second trial, I actually went to talk to Skip and about my case, having him come to Arizona to testify on my second trial because we wanted to get people real close. It's too expensive to fly somebody from New York to Arizona. We can get somebody right here nearby. Travel's a lot less costly. Anyway, Skip said, well, Krone, that case sounds familiar. My attorney was, I mean, it sounds familiar. He goes looking through his files. Skip said, oh yeah, I seen this back in March. Now I was arrested in December. He said, I seen this back in March. What do you mean you seen it? He said, who sent it to you? Well, the prosecutor in Maricopa County. My attorney says, we know he was sentenced to death. Skip said, well, no way, he's innocent. And my attorney said, what did you tell him? He said, I told him it's not a match. Skip Sperber in March, at the time that I was arrested, 3 months after I was arrested, told him it wasn't a match, and they covered it up. With that type of evidence, we were able to sue. I was able to get a settlement. That's enough to pay off my attorney, my family, paid off all their mortgages and things that they had gotten. But now I currently work with a group called Witness Citizens. It's the only national organization of death row survivors in America, other men and women who have been sentenced to death who were later exonerated. It was started by Sister Helen Brejon back in 2002 when I was released. The number 100th was important. I was asked to become a spokesman for it. It's since grown into a nonprofit organization headquartered out of Philadelphia. We tell our stories around the country and work on that. I've recently testified in Nebraska a number of times in Nebraska, who recently have repealed the death penalty. Hopefully it will not come back. It's under a road referendum. But that's what we do. We travel and tell our stories and share our experience with people. And absolute, our object is to abolish the death penalty so no more men and women and families will be faced with that. You can release somebody, as more famous exoneree said, you release somebody from prison, but you can't release them from the grave.
Just to add one thing, as Ray indicated, one of the things he does is concerning the abolition of the death penalty, and there's an active group in Arizona concerning that, and brought Ray here on one occasion and arranged for him to go to the Arizona State Legislature. And many of the legislators apologized to Ray, and I think gave him an ovation. He went to the chambers in the Arizona State Legislature, which, is a pretty unusual occasion. I don't think often do they apologize for, quote, the state of Arizona when a mistake has been done. But they did in Ray's case.
I'm told that was the first time it ever happened in the country. I'm not sure it's been repeated, but it was a very moving part when they stopped proceedings to recognize him. It took a few minutes to tell the story. I wish my family and some friends should have been there because they deserve the same apology, say it wasn't involved legally. But it was something moving to be there. Their actual operating hearing in the Senate that actually was stopped and my name was brought up, and they all turned around and dropped the pencils and clapped and offered a group apology. What happened. Some of them men and women in that legislature were probably responsible for that law that was able to resolve it, not the peace. And I thank them.
And if you're wondering about his teeth, which are, perfect today, he left that little part out of his story, but he was also a participant in the TV show Extreme Makeover, and so today Ray is, has
$50,000 Hollywood.
$50,000.
They called me though,
vacation.
I didn't solicit, they called me, I'm like, who, what? They said, we can't give you your 10 years back, but we can certainly make you look 10 years younger, and you won't be college negative killer anymore. Dr. Bill Dorfman, who does braille text and stuff, was actually what did my teeth. After the 2 months I was out in Hollywood, they actually became a 2-hour show, it was the longest one they ever did. Probably the next year, I got a $60,000 1099 or whatever, you know, that I owe now $6 for services. Thankfully, about a week later, $19,000 check came to pay for those texts, because I had no money at the time. I didn't have the lawsuit selling. I'm like, oh my God, it is. It is true, they called me to be a street maker.
Thank you, Ray. We have one more question, and then we'll take a brief break. Actually, I think Chris had, oh, go ahead, Wendy.
I was just wondering, Ray, if you were able to use the case of Deborah Milkey in your civil lawsuit against the state. Noel Levy was the prosecutor in that case, and as you know, she spent 23 years on death row, and her conviction was overturned, and she was released and free.
Actually, incredibly, it worked the other way. She was able to use her stuff against Noel Levy against me. I was before, Noel Levy was the same attorney who put Deborah Milkey, somebody you may be aware of, on death row, the same type of misconduct, if you will, that Noel Levy. I did not. They protected Noel Levy. He actually recently retired with a meritorious lifetime achievement award stuff. Some people said, did you do anything? I said, you know, about him. I said, oh, I'd rent a van and sit right outside of one of the big hearse vans and sit right outside the DA's office and run his ass over in the crosswalk. It just never happened. But now, you know, he's going to have to live with what he's done, but I'm glad anything that I did in the past could help Deborah out. There was also a couple other cases he's been involved in. David Hyde, I believe, was another case that came off of death row that Noel Levy was responsible for. But no, Deborah's case did not help me one bit, but there are some of the stuff that I've done that will and has helped her already. And I'm thankful for it. I believe her innocence. I don't try not to take a side on any of that. There's lots of that. But one thing I will take side is Noel Levy needs to be prosecuted for numerous times, attempted murder at the minimum. He is retired and drawing taxpayers' money, and nothing has happened to him. But I wish her the best, and again, I look forward to meeting her again. I was fortunate enough to see her last year, shortly after her release, and I'm looking forward to, hopefully we're going to do that again this year, right, Larry?
Yeah.
Oh, but I certainly hope she's doing well, and she's invited. I want to get word to her, too, to let her know about witness innocence, and that she'd ever be interested in being a member of our group of exclusive people that have walked in her shoes are here to be there for her.
Thank you, Ray.